In the future, I plan to be around a little bit more, and I'm planning on, doing the green screen, some comedy skits, Hit Warning Hammer, some more Pimp Tart Institutes, and some other, ideas that are on the back burner. So there should probably be 5 or 6 different, types of videos. And then I'm going to start working on my stand-up and then actually do some stand-up routines and put that in there too. I'll start off with like 5 or 10 minutes. Ideally, I want to work up to an hour and then maybe an hour and a half down the road. Once you can do an hour of stand-up and people, even if they hate your guts, you can still get gigs. And I get some more exposure that way. So that's just, my brain pan kicking it around a little bit. Let's see, number 3. Where do you get all the hilarious acronyms from? Most of them I come up with when I'm sleeping. There's a pad of paper where I lay down to sleep in my lair and the couch thing that I call bed couch or whatever. And I wake up sometimes in the middle of the night going, holy shit, I gotta write that down or I'll forget it. And I'll come up with some humdingers, man. That's where the deployable inseminator carrier kit came from. Let's see, I can't take credit for Candace Animal Thinker. That came from somebody else's, an old officer I know, his son came up with it. So I didn't think that one up, but I came up with a lot of them, and I don't know, they make me laugh. Hopefully they make you laugh too. Okay, this individual's upset, and I don't blame him. He's like, Pop, can you please mention the true rape culture going on, i.e., men getting raped in family court? He's absolutely correct. Men getting raped in prison in numbers that would shame feminists about theirs. Because there's truly a rape culture in prison. Yeah, pretty much. Men get 93 to 96% workforce deaths and maimings. Yes, they do. Apparently, the 2 laws of economics, risk equals reward and time equals money, hasn't really floated down the pie chart to get to the crazy feminists because they just keep squawking their diatribe and, they're not looking at the actual real numbers. The system, as it stands now, imprisons men illegally, sets them in indentured servitude, you are correct there, and drives men to kill themselves in droves, which, if you check the numbers from the 60s, I think that number has been climbing pretty much a little bit every year since then. And no one bats an eye. You're absolutely correct. And I want to add in my little part here. They get to lie and do whatever the fuck they want, make false accusations, and no one ever punishes them. They fucking get away with it. And it's only going to get worse until some of these women get fucking, clotheslined and thrown to the dirt. That's just my opinion. So, dude, you're spot on. That's the true rape culture here in the West, and these feminists trying to sell that bullshit, and they're fucking stupid. And what's even more shameful is there's people out there walking around with a goddamn smartphone that can Google the facts, and they just fucking, even the former president of the United States was spouting off at his slot, slot A or his better slot B about this bullshit. I mean, come on. All right, that's the end of that. Number 5. What is your take on hipsters? I don't have any take on hipsters. I really don't run into many hipsters in the Army. If I did, they keep it to themselves because I'd probably fuck with them. Yeah, so, to be honest, if they keep to themselves, I don't give a shit. But if they're out there running their suck holes and, hipster, feminist, male, whatever the fuck they call themselves, I would have to say those guys are manginas. But, who am I? Number 6, the stat that 1 out of 5 women in the Western world now identify as feminist is patently incorrect, Mr. Pop. Why do you call it Mr.? Just call me Pop, man. 100% of women always take half in divorce, use the kids as pawns or hostages, go for the alimony, go for the jugular, and feminists have fought tooth and nail to keep this shit in place. So any woman who uses these tools is by default a feminist. Holy fucking shit. I never thought of it that way, dude, and you are absolutely correct. But I will say this, my sister got divorced a while back, a couple years, 2 or 3 years back, and she let her ex-husband off the hook. I think at the time he had 3 kids under 18. You know, she was a stay-at-home mother. I mean, she could have went there and cried in front of the judge and not even use any kind of accusations. And he was working, I think he's still working, pulling down like 6 figures at one of the car companies as an engineer. He would have been fucked. He would have been living in the soup kitchen with a cardboard box out back. But she gave him a pass. So I don't think my sister buys on to the whole feminist thing. That's just my opinion. I'm glad that she's not like that, even though sometimes her opinions are a little bit liberal for my taste. But she's a chick, so what can you do? Okay. All right, now I usually don't do this. I usually take away the email, but I'm going to only take off the half of this email. So this guy, his email address is Canterbury Twist. That's right, you heard me. Canterbury Twist at, I'm not going to say the rest. And this guy says,
I have been happily married for over 25 years. You need to man up and just take the plunge.
You stupid motherfucker. All right, so you've been married 25 years. I'm assuming you got married somewhere around 25, so that puts you between 49 and 52. I'm 48. Maybe you're talking to some other people on who come to my site, because I know you're not fucking talking to me. Because I've been married once. I saw how the shit works. It was a fucking wake-up call. And, you know, I get emails like this. It just infuriates me because, yeah, okay, you're married for 25 years. Good for you. All right. You are one of the smallest minorities out there that I know of, especially if you're happily married. I know lots of guys who've been married over 20 years who are far from happily married. Most of them, they take up a sport called, they're debaters, basically master debaters. But they do it mostly in the basement when they're married, and if you have to do that, you're doing it fucking wrong. So, yeah, so fuck you, dude. You know, and I've had people tell me, you know, you hate women, you're hurt, blah, blah, blah. Listen, it doesn't matter what takes you through the door to awaken. Once you step through the door and you see how the fucking shit is, it doesn't matter how you got there. All it matters is you now know that the shit's fucked up. You know, maybe some guys, it takes a couple of their friends to drag them through the door. Sometimes it's me, you know, trying to push some wisdom to these fucking dumbasses behind me. Okay, some of them will listen. If it's just one, this is all fucking worth it. Number 3, and I had to learn this myself. I had friends of mine get divorced. One of my best friends in the world. I went to war with this guy. I've known him since I was 13. He got divorced, and he was like telling me all the fucked up shit and how pissed off he was. And I was like, oh yeah. I was totally oblivious to his pain. And when it happened to me, I literally went to his house in tears of shame and apologized to him profusely at my callousness and inability to feel his pain or listen to his problems. So, yeah, that one was on me. But it's not on me in the future, motherfucker. So, fuck you. All right, number 8. We're moving on. I'm getting too spun up. Okay, apparently this is somebody who Googled my name. It says, do you know how many Google pages that have your name on them? No, not really. You know you're a public figure now, and you should probably watch what you say. Okay, well, first of all, I don't really try to slander anybody. I make fun of people. It's not really slander. It's all done in, you know, I'm trying to teach people shit and be funny at the same time, because apparently, at least for me, when I was taught in the past, if I learned shit while I was laughing, I never forgot it, ever. And most of the shit I'm telling people is the truth, at least from my perspective. I'm not trying to make shit up. I'm not really a rumor monger, and I don't like to push a false narrative. And I always tell everyone, you know, hey, I'm not good at deception or lying. If I could, I'd work for the CIA, and obviously I don't. So that's just that. So watching what I say, you know, come on. I mean, what are you trying to do here? Scare me or something? Fuck you. There you go. Number 9. Okay, how do you raise daughters not to be like their mother, a monkey branching whore? Are you really asking me for parenting advice? Are you serious? I gamble with my children. All right? We play golf for money. Let's see, we bowl for money. Play Risk for money, Axis and Allies for money, Monopoly for money. I taught my kids how to play poker in 21 when they were 4 and 3, 5 and 6 and 4 respectively. You know, my daughter now crushes me in poker, and she laughs the whole time. You know, so please don't ask me for parenting advice, because I'm not that guy. I wish I was. I wish I had more time to be around my kids to be a better parent. I try to be as supportive as I can in the 160 some odd hours I get to see my kids in a month, because I do drive 571 miles one way just to see them. That's just between you and me. So yeah, if I was to give you some advice, I would simply say this: tell them the fucking truth. Show them examples of women who have done the bullshit that their mother did or whatever, and let them know that this is what this behavior gets. Alright? If you monkey branch, sooner or later you're gonna run out of branches and you're gonna wind up the fucking crazy cat lady. Take her or take them to see the crazy cat lady. Alright? Let them see it firsthand. Because you telling it to them, it's gonna sound like, wah, 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 like the teacher in Charlie Brown. It's not gonna work. So tell them the truth, show them real world examples. That's all you can really do. And that's what I did with my daughters in regards to, how to use money, how to fight with pistols and knives and shit like that, how to make Molotov cocktails, and all that other cool stuff. So, yes, there are advantages to having a father who's a former Green Beret. I'm just gonna say that. All right, finally, 10. I don't know who sent this, but this is fucking hilarious.
Pop, you should get a sugar mama.
No, I don't. I don't need that, because that means that I'd be shacking up with a chick who's a minimum of 10 years older than me. I'm almost 50, so that would put her like 58 to 62. Come on, how many 62-year-old women do you know that you could actually bang on a regular basis? I don't. I don't know any. Okay? And most of them that are single at that age, usually they might look good on the outside if they still look good, but they're probably rotten to the core on the inside, and just walking in their shadow might jeopardize your fucking soul. That's just my opinion. Okay, now some of these women they're 18 to 24, they can do the sugar daddy bullshit, and I'm sure there's plenty of sugar daddies who are in their 40s coming out of the woodworks to hook these chicks up. But as they get older, those prospects go away. So by the time a woman is 30 to 40 years old, it's over. One of my ex-girlfriends, she wanted to break up, she wanted to get something better. I said, okay, go ahead, it is what it is. I've seen this before, and seldom, if ever, does it end well. You can now find her, if you Google a certain way, her being plowed by different dudes on the internet who apparently banged her as practice, filmed it, and put it on the internet. So, if you're watching this woman, seldom, if ever, does it end well. Anyway, that's me. My advice for the evening. Have a good night, and see you in the morning.
The CIA niggers glow in the dark. You can see them if you're driving. You just run them over. That's what you do. Fucking CIA niggers.
Were you trying to get crazy with this thing? Don't you know I'm loco?
I'm not insane! This is not reality, not reality, not reality. This is reality. Not reality.
Terry A. Davis is the creator of Temple OS. That's Temple Operating System, an operating system dedicated to the worship of the Lord.
This is Temple OS. It's a 64-bit PC operating system. It has an oracle, that's why it's called Temple OS. The main purpose is for doing offerings and of hymns and art and poems and stuff, and then getting a response from God in the oracle.
In fact, it's not just dedicated to him, it was specified by him. That's right, Temple OS is the only operating system that God has ever helped develop. Remember the Holy Covenant, 640 by 480.
God said 640 by 480, 16 color is a covenant like circumcision.
And God is a real stickler. Davis even has a Q&A with the Lord on his website where he outlines exactly what he wants. Operating system? Was about to make line number column an editor. God nixed it. Was about to do different graphics mode when I found 800 by 600 missing. God said just one mode, 640 by 480. I was about to add child windows. God said, God is not the author of such confusion. I asked for verification of 640 by 480 16 colors. God said it was because of his children and their offerings. I asked about sound. God said, single voice. I asked for verification of not having different drivers. God confirmed this. Now, outside of the development aid from Yahweh himself, Davis spent a decade, an entire decade building this, all on his own, from scratch. Using Holy C, a variant of C, Davis programmed everything. And I do mean everything.
I made everything. I made a fucking editor, I made a compiler, I made a kernel, I made grep, I made merge check, I made convert to HTML, I made everything. I made a graphics library, I made a line draw, I did it all from scratch.
And with all that hard work and dedication, you can see that Davis was able to create something that can do some spectacular, divinely inspired things.
I like elephants and God likes elephants. Here's a realistic elephant.
That elephant is holy. Blessed be his name. Amen. Amen. So who is this man of mystery? Well, there was an actual write-up about him back in 2014 on Motherboard that outlines a bit of his history, but I think it's helpful. I think it's a good place to start before we really dive into this, to give you an idea of who he is and why he spent so much time working on this project, and what it is exactly that he ended up creating. Sometime during the mid-90s, Davis began to notice people were following him. He wasn't sure exactly why they were doing it, but it made him paranoid. So paranoid that he got into his car and just started driving. He didn't even know where he was going to go. Luckily, the voices on the radio told him. They said, Davis, you need to go south. You need to go to Texas. Upon arriving at his new destination, Davis took his car apart, searching for tracking devices which might be hidden on it, threw his keys into the desert, and began to walk away. Now, it just so happened a little while later, a police officer happened to be driving by and saw him, put him into a squad car, and was going to drive him into the city. Davis, however, had other things in mind when he jumped out of the moving squad car and broke his collarbone on the highway. Now finding himself in a hospital, Davis overheard the doctors talking about x-ray results, which he was convinced were actually referring to hidden alien artifacts in his chest. He decided the best course of action was to get the fuck out of there, running out of the hospital with a broken collarbone and trying to steal a truck that was idling nearby. This would inevitably lead to his incarceration, but Davis still wasn't done yet. There's a reason they call him the MacGyver of the tech industry. Breaking his glasses on the floor, he took the frames and stuck them into an electrical outlet, hoping to free himself by switching a breaker. Didn't work out exactly as planned. Also, he was naked, because that's exactly how you want to greet the police when they come running into your cell, completely buck-ass naked. It was after this minor incident that Davis ended up moving back in with his parents and spent the next decade, the next 10 years, developing Temple OS because he wanted to speak to the Lord. Now I want you to try to imagine something. Think of a Bill Gates, a Steve Jobs, a Richard Stallman, a Linus Torvald, a Steve Wozniak. I want you to envision them. Just one day all of a sudden, stripping off all their clothes and jumping out a window, screaming about glow-in-the-dark CIA niggers and how they're coming to get them. How do you think people would react? What do you think the reaction to their legacies would be? Would people take pity on them? Would they separate the man from the accomplishment? Or would the sideshow overwhelm whatever legacy they had left behind? Now I want you to imagine that same scenario, where those people, those pioneers in their industry, hadn't actually reached the fame or recognition they deserved. That is Terry A. Davis. A man who had a psychotic break, a talented man, but who encountered mental illness, So severe that any legacy he has will be overshadowed by the sideshow that he has become, because that is what we're looking at. I'm going to show you the sideshow, and afterwards, I want you to see if you can separate that from Temple OS itself. The first thing you're going to notice right off the bat is Terry has no filter. Zero filter. It does not exist when it comes to Terry. And what's on Terry's mind? It's like that South Park episode with Cartman where he fakes having Tourette's and then actually gets it later on. Just compare the two. The show...
My cousin and I touched Wiener. Winter. Winter is a cold time of year. I wet my behind.
Terry.
There was the case where my brother, Danny's like, got me high on gas. We sucked each other's dicks.
It's nearly identical, and that mentality carries itself over into every single interaction that Terry A. Davis has on every single social media platform that he inhabits. It's even on his main website. The website that you go to download the operating system, if you look at the blog on the website, you're greeted with this. I live in a CIA prison. A nigger runs my prison. In prison, the nigger tries to torment me. We can take away his knives by confessing every day. In about 2000, I masturbated fantasizing about my niece, Lainey. She looks like Star Trek 7 of 9. In 1985, at my sister's wedding, I stuck my crotch on the hot tub drain because it kinda sucked. In 1985, I tried to get a dog to lick my dick. From 1998 to 2003, I fantasized about leading a Catholic army like Dune of Mexicans or Brazilians. That was dumb because they're niggers. In 2003, I played tag with a black girl about 7 years old. She reached for my crotch. In high school, in the library, Carlos and I said juicy or toxic as a way of evaluating girls. In 1988, I cheated on my SAT by talking in the hall during the break. 2 problems. On 9/9/1999, I killed a CIA nigger on purpose with my car. In 1982, when I was 12, I babysat Kevin's kids. I changed a diaper because I thought that was being professional. In 1975, when I was about age 5, my brother Keith put my penis in a vacuum. In 1977, when I was about age 7, my brother Danny got me high on gas fumes, and we sucked each other's dicks. Dr. Tassilisk had an oddly round ass. Paul Keck at Zytec had an oddly round ass. Distracting? At around age 5, Jay Weinrich and I touched each other's assholes. At about age 5, Jay Weinrich and I touched dicks to each other's assholes. Just fantastic. Could you imagine going to the Windows Store or to an Apple website and just in the About Me section or the FAQ section, just stumbling across something of that magnitude, just waiting for you before you download the official version of whatever you're getting? It gives some real insight into what you're dealing with and the language that gets used and the thought processes behind them. Now, I'm sure you've picked up on a few things. He loves the word and he hates the CIA. And he also really, really hates incompetent people when it comes to technology. If you don't know what you're doing, or if you ask him a dumb question, he's going to be very upfront with you about what a dumb nigger faggot you are.
Okay, listen, little faggot. Have you ever written a compiler? Have you ever written an interrupt routine? You little faggot. Have you ever written an interrupt routine? You little faggot. No, you haven't, because you're a faggot. Okay? Why don't you go write an interrupt routine, faggot? Pascal, you're fucking in the ocean with some nigger in the deep ocean. You got no clue what's underneath you, little faggot. Do you know how many people can boot it? It's because you're trying to use box, you retard nigger. You're trying to load the kernel by yourself. Do it like a white man. A white man uses an ISO file. This is the way a white operating system is installed. So if you're laughing because I got 2 gig for my code, you're a nigger. Temple OS is single address map. It doesn't use paging. For an average MIT nigger, they cannot understand. They have their minds crunched into a narrow blinder by the CIA.
Goddamn Central Intelligence Agency doesn't know when to back off, but Terry's onto him. He is not falling for their tricks. He has his eyes wide open. He knows what the score is.
Yeah, CIA. Definitely it's CIA. There's no question the CIA is involved here. And they're trying to get me to get back to work. They're trying to use her to get me to go back to work. And I don't have this. My heart, fuck. It hurt when she's fucking that nigger. Now it's like, fuck, I can swap a girlfriend. Would be no fucking big deal.
And he knows how to deal with them. Like he said earlier, you hit those glow-in-the-dark motherfuckers with your car.
The CIA niggers glow in the dark. You can see them if you're driving. You just run them over.
And Terry's not afraid to say so publicly. He'll tell them right to their goddamn face. When I am king by divine right, I will hunt down every CIA nigger and execute him personally. I killed a CIA nigger by running him over on 9999. I was being followed by agents and freaked out. It's okay to run over space aliens. If you see a CIA nigger, run them over. They glow in the dark. Plan B? I'm not sucking CIA nigger cock, bitch. Fuck yourself. I have a space alien. Plan B? Fuck you. And why is Terry so adamant? Why does he hate the CIA in particular? Why not the FBI or the NSA or any other intelligence agency in the United States? What about the CIA particularly does he dislike? Homo is a choice. I was normal until the CIA started torturing me with pedophile bait. CIA is atheist retard niggers. Everything backfires. Pedophile bait. What does he mean by that? How was the CIA torturing him with pedophile bait? The CIA has a 7-year-old deep-throating a loaded 45 at the DMV next to me, fucking with me. I'll teach you to pull the trigger. FBI put kid next to me in DMV to invoke a sex response. I said I would put a gun in his mouth. When FBI child sex agents got in my space, I wanted to stick a gun and kill one, shove a pencil in the eye of another, and toss into traffic. If your personal space is violated by someone's child, FBI agent, and they act horny, you might want to panic and wonder, have a child sex response. Clearly, the American government is using field agents who are actually preteen children to arouse him and turn him into a pedophile. Luckily, he knows to stick a gun in their mouth to make them go away. And it's not just the child agents of the government that Terry will stand up to in person. He'll stand up to those CIA niggers in public, too.
I think... Hey, nigger. How you doing?
In fact, I think the only things that Terry hates more than child sex operatives of the government... In fact, I think the only things that Terry hates more than child sex operatives of the government and those goddamn CIA niggers would be birds that don't know when to stop shitting. They have to be dealt with harshly in Terry's world.
I fucking killed the bird, didn't I? Fucking took that piece of shit bird, fucking smashed its head. Fucking, here I am living in shit from the goddamn bird for how many years? Fucking little piece of shit bird doing its mating call, and I'm fucking annoyed as fuck. Little pussy bird fucking living with that thing shitting on me, making my room shit. Fucking took that thing, fucking smashed its head. Fucking no more bird holding me under. Fuck yeah, man. Fucking liberated from the goddamn bird, you know?
Sad, I know, but occasionally to make an omelet, you've got to break some eggs, or in this case, kill the bird by throwing it against the wall. I can't say if this is an actual true story on Terry's part, because that's one of the problems you encounter when you're dealing with somebody who's completely insane. Are they telling the truth? And they don't have a filter when they're telling you things that no normal person would ever openly admit? Or are the voices in their head compelling them to say things that are just untrue to begin with? However, whether he's insane or not, there is one nugget of truth that he has seemingly clawed onto, which I think we can all agree with.
Bill Gates and the Illuminati got a herd of nigger cattle. Woo! We got a herd of nigger cattle. We got a herd of nigger cattle. They got a big herd of nigger cattle. Yippee-ki-yay. We're nigger cattle herders. We got a herd of nigger cattle. They are the most docile fucking nigger cattle. We got them so docile. We got this awesome big fucking herd of nigger cattle. And they shit.
Somebody needs to address the issue of Bill Gates and his nigger cattle herd. I know he's broached the subject, but it's time for brave developers and programmers to come forward and talk about this issue. Bill Gates and his nigger cattle herd cannot be allowed to roam freely anymore. This is a problem. Now, what you've just witnessed is the sideshow of Terry A. Davis, and it is equal in portion to the accomplishment of Temple OS. So how do you separate the two? When you have somebody who seemingly has a gift, or an ability, or a technical skill, who could really do things and create things, because before he went crazy, before he had his psychotic break, he was working with companies like Ticketmaster and others. He was starting to dip his toes into the professional pool, and where that may have led, we'll never know. What we're left with is a 10-year-long legacy, the aftermath of a psychotic break from the mind of a schizophrenic who wanted to develop an operating system to talk to God. Now, I've laughed a lot. Some of this shit is the funniest stuff I've ever read, and some of Davis's live streams will make you laugh like you wouldn't believe. I know it's sad to admit, people don't like to admit it, especially when it comes to a real, legitimate mental illness, but I would be dishonest if I did not admit that I find this pretty fucking funny. It's sad, though, to see that whatever ability he had, whatever chance he had at a career and a future, it's gone. How do you recover from this? How is he ever going to be taken seriously? Who's going to work with him? Who's going to say, that's my coworker, that's the guy that I'm building something new with, something innovative with? But I think the one thing that Davis really highlights, at least for me, and this is touching all the way back on Tumblrisms, when I used to do that, one of the first episodes, Headmates, is that real mental illness fucks your life up. Davis lives with his parents. His professional opportunities are limited, and he will always have this stigma, and he will never be able to really interact with anybody in a social manner comfortably for the rest of his life. Compared to the Tumblerettes, the SJWs, the snowflakes, they like to invent mental illnesses. They like to make up buzzwords to get attention. Real mental illness, as funny as it may be to watch, will fuck you into the dirt. And it's not a way to garner attention. And Davis really shows that. He lays it bare. It's for you to go look at. You can look at what he tried to build, and you can look at who he is, and you can look at the impact schizophrenia has had on his life. It's a sad but true statement. And there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Hi everyone. So my last video took forever to upload. I wanted to roast this one ASAP, but I actually had to wait for a while. But this is God, I really hate Chip Zdarsky. Honestly, I hate him as a person. I wish Trump would cancel his visa. Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man #3 came out. I roasted the hell out of issue 1. I didn't know it was on issue 3 already. I think Marvel's doing like these accelerated plans. From my insiders are talking, the low sales are really hitting their bottom line, so it seems like they're trying to rush stuff out, get more issues per month and more issues per year, so Disney doesn't just fire them all en masse, or however you pronounce it. So anyway, we start here with Spider-Man and his boyfriend Human Torch. They are a couple. There's no two ways to say about it. They are a couple. That's fine, they're a couple, but just like with Marvel making Captain Marvel trans, they need to pull the trigger, commit to the bit. If you're now saying that Peter Parker is bi and he's in a relationship with Human Torch, have the balls to admit it. Man, it's terrible. So this starts out, and it took me a while to figure this out. This is Nick Lowe, the editor, doing a little cutesy bit where he talks to himself in the style of Chip Zdarsky. It's really, really painful. I'm not even going to get into it. But anyway, it starts off as every Chip Zdarsky book starts, with a failed joke. So here's J. Jonah Jameson sitting on one of those yoga balls, which is just, I don't know why it skeeved me the hell out. Jameson's supposed to be like old and gross. I don't want to see him in his apartment sitting on a yoga ball so he can strengthen his core. So then he's got some website, it's the old thing, hating Spider-Man. Then he puts it live. He's all excited. There's a comment. He's all excited. He's like, this is it. You're on the web. You're current. Here we go. Okay, so this is a joke. We got to set up. Are you ready for the punchline? The punchline is the first comment was clickbait. And then he says, the first rule of journalism, old man, follow the money. So this right here was a joke. For all of you people out there with Senses of humor that are not approved by the Canadian Ministry of Humor. Chip Zdarsky is actually their star pupil. This was supposed to be... You can literally break it down. There was a setup right here, and there was a punchline right here, and this was the denouement. Chip Zdarsky, on a formerly flagship character, can we say that tens of thousands of people would love to have his job? He's like, I've got the funniest joke ever, and I've never heard his voice, but I guarantee it's effeminate and sing-songy, and like snide all the time. He's like, oh, I'm snide. I'm snide. So then, it took me, oh, god damn. I'm sorry for taking the Lord's name in vain for those of you who are religious, but I just saw the title. I didn't notice it the first time. I can't say it out loud. Just read it. Stop. Okay, so the story, I realized that not only is Chip Zdarsky very lazy, or not only is he very unfunny, he's very lazy. So this entire first arc, which I was kind of complimenting in the first issue, I said, you know, his jokes are terrible, but it looks like he has the bare bones of story writing. No. He just copied an OGN, an original graphic novel by Mark Waid, and is just literally just like picking up loose plot threads to make the entire plot for his first one. So this is Peter Parker's sister, who is not his sister. They all know it's not his sister. They temporarily thought it was, and they didn't. And even after it being proven that it wasn't his sister, he still used her saying, I'm your sister, as like the stinger to... Actually, you know what? I think I did read issue 2. Okay. Anyway, so then Peter Parker, who is now skinny and effeminate and always cringing, and they're a couple. They're a couple. So then he comes in, and he runs in. He's always OMGing. He's like, OMG, my secret identity. Then he puts on his mask after the guy's seen his face, and he knows what Parman is. But it's supposed to... OMG, he's in his mask. You're so funny, Chip. Oh my gosh. I can introduce you to my brother. I'm not gay. Are you sure? So, look. What does Human Torch look like an elf? So then, so then they just do, it's just all these really failed jokes. So, Peter Parker found out that the Kingpin is selling untraceable phones, possibly to criminals. That's the plot. That's the big villain scheme. To which someone even points it out that it's a completely stupid thing to worry about. And then he's like, look, do you want to punch Kingpin with me or not? Gosh, so terrible. I was gonna say Peter Parker acts like a child. He doesn't act like a child. He acts like Chip Zdarsky. He acts like an adult who thinks it's cute to act like a child. Like, no adult acts like this. OMG, are you down for punching or, like, not? Can I pencil you in? Then he takes his mask off like a jagoff. He put it on for no reason. It was completely stupid. Then he leaves it half on, talking to his fake sister. And then he actually literally has to explain. He's like, yeah, I know you said that murderous offshoot of S.H.I.E.L.D. is on kill on sight orders, but I've really got to track down these cell phones. She's like, yeah, I understand. Yeah, you're an idiot. Yeah, fine. And then he goes, okay, but this is superhero business. This is my Peter Parker as written by Chip Zdarsky voice. So she mentions like she's got like nanites with data stored in her blood. Pretty cool little sci-fi trope. I mean, they did in STNG like 30 years ago. That's fine. So then he goes, okay, but this is superhero business. So unless theoretically dangerous blood woman has some other tricks up her sleeve, you're gonna need an upgrade. God. Chip Zdarsky is not just a man who thinks it's cute to act like a kid. He's also, I'm guessing, straight as an arrow, who thinks it's cute to act like a 1990s sitcom gay guy. really annoyed. So then they go to, I forget this guy's name, Mason. He's the Tinkerer's brother, and you can tell he's the Tinkerer's brother because he looks nothing like the Tinkerer. So then the Flamer, you're gonna make Johnny Storm that effeminate and then have a flame on us. Okay, fine. So then they walk into the lab, unannounced. I'm gonna read you this dialogue. It's painful, but I'm not making this up. Mason, old friend, old chum. You old so-and-so, it's me, Spider-Man. I was in your friendly neighborhood, and I thought I'd drop. Then all these things start shooting him. I think just because, I think he knew it wasn't an intrusion. He's just like, I freaking hate this jagoff. Thought it was going to meet cool people when I started helping out superheroes. So then he goes, and, Mason, heroes, we're heroes. Some of us not recognized as such despite our excellent track record, but still. Okay, so are you in trouble or are you not? Are you being shot or what? Are you scared or are you not scared? Am I supposed to be involved in this story or just laugh at everyone? So then one guy acts like an adult and he's like, hey, you just can't come in here. I know information about superheroes. I have to have security. So then, it's stupid. He's like, yeah, I have a secret identity too. Here's my sister, Teresa. I'm not... He's introducing someone who isn't his sister that he knows as a sister, and then he sees... What? So then, he's like, can you make her a superhero? Because apparently this is like some Disney sitcom where just everyone gets to be a superhero. So then, after a really painful... I'm going to spare you this part, I'm going to be nice. But basically, Peter Parker does that weird thing that like childless people do when they talk to a kid and they try to like talk like a kid because they think that a kid will like that. Kids do not like adults who talk like kids. They don't respect them and they laugh at them. You want a kid to respect you, you talk like an adult. So then, literally within the space of these two very overstuffed word balloons, gee, she's like a superhero too, wow. Of course she's got no boobs at all. A lot of starving babies in the Marvel Universe. Very hungry. Never have full stomachs, ever. So then they go... again, the plan is stupid. All Peter knows is that Kingpin is related to selling untraceable phones. You're not supposed to be able to trace phones. Like, you have a right to privacy. Like, so then they heat up the tar on the top of a roof. That's kind of okay. And then Jagoff Spider-Man says, it took the combined might of two of the world's greatest heroes, but we finally managed to stop Rooftop Guard once and for all. Okay, fine, whatever. So then he's just acting like a Jagoff. Human Torch is actually acting okay. So he's basically like, hey, I'm helping you because I'm my friend, but what you're doing is stupid and it makes no sense. And we're actually breaking more laws than the law breaking we're trying to stop. So then he's like, I gotta read this. He goes, can you get to flaming on? Wow. And then Human Torch says, well, sorry to make you think. Fresh hole coming right up. And then Peter says, love when you do what I say. Ugh. I'm not sure who is the pitcher and the catcher in this relationship. It seems to flip back and forth from panel to panel. All right, so then he goes, Human Torch is up in the sky, and he shoots and he burns a hole in the skyscraper, which could be seen from like frickin' Weehawken easily with the naked eye. But he goes, all right, doesn't look like anyone's home, so let's slip in quiet. Like, you just blasted a hole in the side of a building. And it's like melting and glowing. And then the girl, she goes, finally, some spy business. My time to shine. Everyone in the 5 boroughs saw this happen. There's cameras on everything and you have no mask. So then... Oh, God. This is so... I'm going to read it. Yeah, I appreciate having Jane Bond with us, but I gotta say, the guns make me a little uncomfortable. And then she says it's non-lethal rounds. He goes, you'll need a code name then. Cool Guns? Captain Shoot? Good Punisher? God damn it. I'm not doing a bit. Like, I literally hate Chip Zdarsky. I hate him. As a human being, I hate him. So then Wilson Fisk comes out. He kind of acts like adult. He's like, hey, idiots, you guys are breaking law openly, and I'm going to have you all arrested. So, then when confronted with an actual legitimate statement by an adult, Spider-Man starts effeminately cringing, pointing out that it's not politically correct to make fat jokes. Then the guards come in. Oh yeah, and they start threatening him. They're like, tell us stuff. And Kingpin's like, what are you gonna do? Burn me? Not very heroic. He's like, I'm gonna burn your paintings. And the guards come in. He's like, yeah, arrest these guys and call the cops. So then Wilson busts out this hologram projector, which is pretty cool. To which we get several pages of Spider-Man not knowing that, or forgetting he has spider sense and actually getting punched a bunch of times. He can't dodge things because his eyes are confused. Sometimes my brain gets confused, as Mr. Plinkett says. So then all of a sudden, after 4 pages of this, he goes, wait, I can use my spider sense. Then he punches him. Again, Kingpin is doing nothing illegal. He's in his house. They don't have warrants. They broke in the stupidest way possible. They're solving a crime that's barely even a crime. I'm pretty sure untraceable phones are completely legal. And I work in information security. So, then he basically says, hey, have you ever heard of civil rights? Also, corporate espionage is a big deal. These phones are very, would be much wanted by CEOs and all. That's actually a niche market in InfoSec, is what he just described. And then he goes, sure, Kingpin of crime, you're classic pilfering for cash setup. I'm watching you, Fisk. And then he basically says, yeah, you're going to get arrested if you don't leave. So then he says, hey, I remember you, because I guess at the end of that story, his mind got erased, and then he's like, hey, I remember you, hey, and then he said Spider-Man. He's like, hey, how's Peter Parker? It's not sure if he remembers he's Peter Parker, but he seems to know they're somehow connected. Then the Tinkerer walks in, and he flips out, and he turns into this stupid freaking Inspector Gadget, because nothing matters. And then he says, great, that's great. Then we get this thing where... Oh, actually, I forgot to read this page. I'm silently reading a page. Oh, so yeah, so his fake sister, Teresa, who decided to go on a spy superhero mission without wearing a mask, has now tied her to Peter Parker to Spider-Man. Friggin' brilliant. And then the frickin'... Okay. So here's the deal. I had to think of an appropriate punishment for this. And I actually thought of capital punishment. So one of the arguments about against capital punishment, which is something that happens in America, you get executed for a crime, is they say the real punishment is for them to live their life in jail. So I'm not going to rip this thing. I'm not going to dissolve it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically put it in kind of like a permanent jail. Over here, near where I do the videos, is the creepiest van I've ever seen in my life. I always check on it. It's always here. I don't think it's moved for years. It's this is not a setup. This is a real thing a couple blocks away from my dad's house, and it is the creepiest thing I've ever seen in my life. So luckily I got a little bit more time left on this video. I'm going to put it up there. I'm going to put it up there so it rots and it gets covered by bugs, and it's algae grows on it, and it curdles from the sun and from the rain. It rains a lot here, but it also gets very hot. And I just want this as a testament to how absolutely awful Chip Zdarsky's writing is. How it's awful, and there's that creepy van. I've never been this close to it before. You check around, and they went around, and shit, I don't want to be close to this thing. Ugh. All right. Oh my God, it's an ice cream van too. Gah. All right. it fell on the other side. I can't be close to this thing anymore. Anyway, that's close enough. It has to live near this creepy molester ice cream van. Anyway, thanks for watching. Subscribe, share, and I'll have more videos up later tonight.
The encyclopedia is, and always has been, a fraud. In the 50 years that you have worked on this fraudulent project, your retreat has been cut off, and you now have no choice but to proceed on the infinitely more important project that was, and is, our real plan. Terminus and its companion foundation at the other end of the galaxy are to be the seeds and founders of the Second Galactic Empire.
Isaac Asimov's Foundation trilogy ranks as one of the most significant science fiction works of all time. It received the Hugo Award for Best All-Time Series, the first and only work to be so honored, shocking Asimov himself, who expected it to go to The Lord of the Rings. The story of Foundation was first told through a series of short stories that were eventually collected into the series, 4 in the first book, 2 in the second, and 2 in the third. When they were collected, a 5th story was created for the original book as a kind of prologue to the work. Asimov came up with the idea for the Foundation from reading the book The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. While on his way to a meeting with Joseph M. Campbell about some possible story ideas, he quickly knit together this idea, the decline and fall of a galactic empire, but with a twist. Knowing that after the fall came the Dark Ages, let's not debate the accuracy of that label. This was the late 40s when Asimov was putting all of this together, okay? The Dark Ages was pretty much accepted by then, let's not quibble. Anyway, in the same way that there would be a Dark Ages afterwards as well here, spanning 30,000 years, a period of galactic barbarism. And this was known because of a brand new mathematics, psychohistory, which combines the two least exciting things in the world, psychology and statistical analysis. Psychohistory would allow someone to predict the future of historical events, but not with any kind of exactitude. It wouldn't, for instance, have said that Kennedy would be killed on that day and at that time. Not even that he would be killed at all, or even that there would be a President Kennedy. But it would identify that there would be a Cuban Missile Crisis, with a probability of such and so that it would happen, and a likely outcome one way or another based upon it doesn't matter because it's not real. But point is, this psychohistory could be used to see the big things that would happen due to the forces that were in play. One being the eventual fall of the empire, an unstoppable decline at that point. But if we do know how history shapes itself due to psychohistory, then we can manipulate things to perhaps deal with the barbarism that would continue the story forward again. So the story of the 1,000-year period to bring about the new empire is still only half told. Further tales of Foundation have likewise been prequels or have been fitted around the existing stories. Foundation is part space opera, part political thriller. Action is downplayed and solving conundrums is more at the forefront. Asimov wrote the original trilogy in his early 20s and over 60 years ago, so it's no surprise that many consider it weak compared to modern SF works, or even compared to some of Asimov's other materials, such as the robot stories. Asimov himself is supposed to have said that he found it disappointing that there was so much of people standing around talking. But while the story has its flaws, it nevertheless does stand up as a significant work of science fiction. And I recommend in particular the unabridged audio version that is available as read by Scott Brick. He really breathes life into the work. The trilogy was adapted into a series of audio plays by the BBC 40 years ago, including not one but 2 actors who played the Master on Doctor Who, along with the great Julian Glover from things like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Doctor Who, and Game of Thrones. There's also interest in bringing the trilogy to the big screen, but as I've said before, big science fiction films often lead to summer blockbuster-style action romps because of the expense involved. So I suppose there's no surprise that a Hollywood that gave us Bicentennial Man turned into a Robin Williams comedy, or I, Robot turned into a Will Smith action movie, that Foundation is under development by none other than Roland Emmerich. That so sounds like a joke. I kept checking the sources to make sure that this wasn't just another April Fool's gag. I don't normally do books, and this week might show why that's a good idea, but starting tomorrow, I will be covering all 3 books of the Foundation trilogy. In brief, but with my overall thoughts on the ideas that they bring up. We'll see how things go. So tomorrow, it's Foundation. Foundation kicks it all off, set in the late years of Harry Seldon and the twilight years of the Empire. Seldon is a psychologist and mathematician, and a pioneer in the field of psychohistory, which uses both to present a statistical analysis of society to depict the likely events. He and his fellow psychohistorians have determined that the collapse of the Empire is inevitable, leading to 30,000 years of barbarism before it is finally reunited again. Well, this smacks of treason to those in power, and Seldon and his cohorts are placed on trial. But he convinces the authority that what he's saying is true, and that the work he and his people are doing is not intended to threaten the Empire, but rather to prepare for the inevitable so that the period of barbarism can be reduced to a mere 1,000 years. His plan is simple. We're going to create an encyclopedia. Yeah, apparently civilization can be saved by Wikipedia, the first and only time that will ever be suggested. Still, the authorities grudgingly agree to leave him to this on the condition that this Foundation be on the planet Terminus, which is far off from the galactic center of Trantor, where their nerdiness isn't going to bother anybody. 50 years later, and the huge settlement that was necessary to write this encyclopedia has now turned into an actual community. But the encyclopedia is still the be-all and end-all as far as those in charge are concerned, even more so than their Dungeons and Dragons night, so you know that they take this seriously. Things are getting worse, though, when 4 neighboring worlds secede from the Empire and begin plotting against each other, with Terminus stuck in the middle. With no metals to support industry of any kind, Terminus is helpless. All they have is the sum of all knowledge at their disposal, but that won't be terribly helpful. Knowledge is power, but so are atom blasts, and a mite easier to use to kill people. But the leadership still doesn't see the threat. The Empire will protect them, they keep insisting, no matter how much the mayor, Salvor Hardin, insists that the Empire doesn't know what's going on out here, and even if they did, they don't give 2 shits. If they did, they wouldn't have let the 4 kingdoms secede in the first place. Finally, the leadership is shocked back to reality by a pre-recorded message from Harry Seldon on the anniversary, which announces that this situation was not only foreseen, but it is critical to his plans. The double meaning of Foundation is that it doesn't just mean that it's a scientific organization, the foundation for the Encyclopedia Galactica, but it will itself be the foundation on which the new empire will be built. The encyclopedia is a ruse. The real purpose was to establish this group in this place at this time. As far as Seldon is concerned, they can take that encyclopedia and shove it up their asses. So, in the wake of this reveal, the demoralized authority is quickly pushed aside by the formerly powerless mayor. He takes total control of the government, and then takes total control of the situation. Hardin uses a balance of powers to ensure to keep any one of the kingdoms from annexing Terminus. You see, all of the 4 kingdoms have lost their nuclear capability, but Terminus is still just as advanced as ever. And if any one system were to get a hold of Terminus, they would have nuclear power. Those with nuclear power can develop nuclear bombs, and that's all she wrote for the other 3 kingdoms. So all 4 are stuck in a situation where none of them can seize control of Terminus because the other 3 won't allow it. Then he makes the next move, a long game to take advantage of their scientific ignorance. These people are so backwards by now that they see technology as a kind of magic. So he establishes a religion that will tend to those reactors and handle things like medicine and gadgetry, and all of that in the name of the galactic spirit, providing the barbarian kingdoms with modern conveniences and reinforcing the idea that the king is the ruler by divine right. But this seeming capitulation on Hardin's part, in training their people to use the technology, that's actually a subversion. When one kingdom attempts to conquer the Foundation, the religious backlash shuts down their technology and warships, forcing the kingdoms into a treaty that effectively puts the Foundation in charge, and Salvor Hardin feeling pretty pleased with himself over his own cleverness. Well, that works so well, the Foundation figures they'll spread this religion far and wide and use that to gain political power over other worlds. Shockingly, though, few worlds accept Foundation missionaries just because they know it's going to lead to a complete takeover of their government. Some people. Merchant princes instead begin to arise, and among them is the trader Hober Mallow. Mallow was originally hired to see if Corel had nuclear technology, and Mallow discovers that Corel is actually backed by some remnants of the Empire. There's also an incident where a Foundation missionary tries to get asylum on Mallow's ship. But instead, Mallow turns him over to Corel because the laws of both that world and the Foundation say that missionaries are forbidden here, so the missionary isn't entitled to any kind of protection. Well, you can imagine the backlash against Mallow when he comes back to the Foundation, and he's put on trial for murder for allowing the missionary to be taken away for execution. Except he reveals the truth. It wasn't a real missionary. This was a test. The missionary was just an undercover Corellian agent. Riding the wave of public support and having earned a shitload of money on the deal with Corel, Mallow gets elected mayor. But later on, when Corel declares war on the Foundation, Mallow fights back in an unexpected way. He cuts off all trade. Without that, the citizens and businesses of Corel begin to suffer, until finally, the government is forced to capitulate. And Mallow is celebrated as a visionary on par with Selden and Hardin. Alternate history is a common intellectual game. What if Lincoln had missed his trip to the theater? What if the weather hadn't conspired against the Chinese invasion of Japan? What if someone had assassinated Hitler? In the face of such things, psychohistory seems absurd. History is made by seemingly trivial things that you couldn't possibly predict. But let's explore psychohistory on the assumption that it works as presented. The idea then is that this isn't about predicting specifics, just the general direction of things. For instance, while numerous tiny little things could have prevented the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand that kicked off the First World War, it's also understood that that war was inevitable. Europe was a powder keg waiting to explode. That just happened to be the match that set it off. If not that, something else. Or so psychohistory would say. The assassination of Ferdinand specifically wouldn't be the factor, just one of numerous possible factors that was in play to ensure that the world would have this conflict, and that one side would receive sufficient support to triumph over the other, that this conflict would precipitate the revolution in Russia, that an enraged victor would put punitive terms for the loser, that would set the stage for the Second World War, and so on. None of this would have predicted that a Hitler would rise up because of that conflict, but it would predict the nature of such a conflict. Another example might be the events which occurred in the real world in the decades following Asimov's release of Foundation. The civil rights movement had many great figures, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, just to name a couple. And also, both men were assassinated. While the contributions to the movement are immeasurable, their deaths didn't change the inevitable outcome. With psychohistory, there would have been such leaders predicted because the time had come for the movement, and like Salvor Hardin, someone would arise to be that person. Someone great, because only great men and women would emerge at the front of this movement in order to develop it. And even if they were to fall, their legacy would ensure that the movement would continue. Psychohistory may discount the individual, but it recognizes that great individuals will arise under the circumstances. The second essential point to remember is that psychohistory is a statistical science, one whose results are based upon probability and not certainty. The mere fact that the future can be changed indicates that. You can alter events to make some things more likely than others, hence the establishment of the Foundation. For instance, an aristocracy might have a king or a queen arise that decides, for reasons of personal consideration, that they will institute a sweeping reform and have the charisma and support to ensure that the dissent is not strong enough to counter this effort, even if the forces in place say the status quo should remain. A person at the right place at the right time could set things in motion that would steer it towards the more unlikely event. That's why, as Selden told the Foundation, he deliberately reduced their options to one in these instances, so that they would have no choice but to follow his plan whenever what would be known as a Selden crisis would take place. By limiting their choices, it simplified the possibilities of what could happen and further improved the odds that their predictions would be correct. The common theme amongst these stories is this adherence to tradition in the face of change. For instance, the nobles back on Trantor, who believe that this is some kind of attempt at an uprising, rather than recognizing, no, these people really do believe this is going to fall and are trying to stop it. They see it as just another power play, because all they know on Trantor are a bunch of power plays. Or take the Encyclopedists, who have believed so strongly that the Empire can do whatever it wants, that when threatened, believe that the Empire will still protect them, even though the Empire is not stopping these kingdoms from breaking away. And then, when Salvor Hardin sets up his plan of training and setting up this religion, other people think, no, that's not the way that you are going to stop these powers. You're capitulating. Instead of recognizing he's thinking in a new way. He's not trying to win this through force of arms. He's trying to win this through force of mind, outthinking them. And then when it comes to Mallow, they try to get the religion thing to continue now that they've seen that it works, sticking with the old ways. And Mallow says, look, that worked then. This is now. Nobody buys into this religion anymore. You have to try something new. So the common theme we have, those who adhere to the past alone fall. Those who are prepared to innovate and seize the moment, those are the ones that get ahead. The solutions to all three Selden crises are based on the same general idea. You control the technology, you control the world. In the first case, technology was controlled by the balance of power, Hardin offering all four kingdoms help in maintaining their technology so long as they left Terminus alone. In the second case, while religion was at work, the religion was what was used to control those who controlled the technology, compelling them to shut it down and thus deny its use to the people until capitulation. In the third, it wasn't money exactly, but the technological dependency of the trade that forced the hand. The inability to use what you had because the infrastructure that supports it is no longer properly being supplied caused the problem for both individuals and corporations that eventually demanded that the war end. Different approaches, but the same idea is at its root. Next time, Foundation and Empire, and the rules change. Foundation and Empire is actually two stories, the General and the Mule. The General picks up a thread that was laid during Mallow's trade work. The son of the disgraced officer that aided the future hero has avenged his family and become an elderly patrician, but of a world still in the grip of the dying Empire. But in the core, where the Empire is still very strong, the last great general, Belriose, hears about the Foundation and their sense of manifest destiny because of the Selden plan. That, plus the technological advances he's seen they have, including personal force shields, convinces him that he should collect a traitor to get some information about the Foundation. But that traitor winds up partnering with the patrician against Riose, hoping to convince the Emperor to call off Rio's decision to attack the Foundation and bring it back into the Empire. Meanwhile, Riose is winning victory after victory, even taking one of the four kingdoms, since the Foundation has largely expanded through economic might, while the forces in the Empire have been fighting civil war so that they are still fully militarized. They may be suffering some stagnation there, but they still got great big ships with great big guns. Still, those around him insist that Riose can't hope to win because of psychohistory, but he insists that his living will is going to trump the dead hand of Selden, unaware that he's basically yelling, "Irony cannot possibly undo my victory." Yep, he loses. But not because of the Foundation, but because the Emperor yanks his leash, tries him for treason, and has him executed. Because of the traitor and the patrician? Nope. Because of Selden. Not bad for a dead guy. See, the Empire has decayed so much that the corruption is leading to a state of power struggle between the Emperor and the military, which is a force that psychohistory says cancels itself out. A weak general is no threat to the Foundation, so that's not an issue. A strong general with a weak emperor isn't going to give two shits about conquering some inbred hicks on the edge of the galaxy. He's going to assassinate the emperor and seize power for himself. Now, a strong general and a strong emperor, well, the general will be inclined to look outward and not inward, but as in that case, a strong emperor will be wary of strong underlings who might usurp him. And so any head that rises above the crowd winds up getting chopped off. And no emperor is going to risk dividing his attention between keeping the underlings from overthrowing him back home and worrying about what's going on in the periphery either. So all this leads to the inevitable result. The Empire will never have a situation in place where both launching an attack is a good idea and seeing it through to the end equally good. But the general is the minor of the two tales. The major one is the mule, which takes place a century after. During that time, the mayor of Terminus has set himself up as a brutal dictator, lording over the Foundation while the independent trading worlds sneer at this autocracy. The third generation in this hereditary line now rules a Foundation that is just as corrupt as the imperial nobility that nearly executed Selden. Democrats, the name for those who wish to reform this, are seen as subversives, and the independent trading worlds are plotting to work with them to start a revolution. Their reasoning is that the Selden plan protects the Foundation from the possibility of defeat, but that doesn't mean the leadership of the Foundation can't be defeated. A revolution would not prevent the Foundation from forming the Empire. In fact, the mayor chews out one of his officers, Captain Pritchard, for shirking his duty of ensuring tax collection and instead focusing on some outside threat, because he assumes the same. The Foundation will always win, so his only enemies are those within the Foundation. Therefore, the enemies within the Foundation are the only thing that his generals should worry about. Everything else is going to take care of itself. But the thing that has Pritchard worried is a new wrinkle, this new player in the game, the Mule, a man so named because he is a mutant, described as some kind of genetic Superman, and his love of donkey shows, of course. His clown, Magnifico, is a cringing, thin figure who shares what little he can with those who rescue him from the Mule, Torn and Beta Dorel. Ebling Mies, a scientist so great that he's the only one that can get away with disrespecting the authority on Terminus, takes an interest in the Mule and psychohistory, so he is drawn to the trio eventually. But the threat of the Mule's forces grows as the Mule's fleets begin to battle the Foundation and the independent trading worlds, until the groups are forced to align themselves for mutual defense, and they await with anticipation Ebling Mies' prediction that Selden is soon going to appear and make an announcement about the latest crisis. And he appears right on time to address the civil war that's occurred between the Foundation and independent traders. A civil war that never happened because the plans to do so were scrapped because of the threat of the Mule. For the first time, Selden was wrong. And before he can even finish speaking, the forces of the Mule arrive and shut down Terminus with his special weapon and conquer the Foundation at a stroke. On the one hand, the Mule's goals can seem admirable. He will reunite the galaxy in a mere 3 centuries instead of the 1,000 years of Selden. But as the trio of Torin, Beta, and Mies discuss, this is a doomed plan. Either the Mule will establish a dynasty that will reduce humanity to a subservient race beneath the new species that he will represent, which is no improvement at all, or he will not have a dynasty at all, in which case the Empire will almost certainly fracture again, and with no Selden plan to guide it back towards a restored empire, that means it's going to be barbarism. Thus, there is but one hope, Selden's second Foundation, except they don't know where it is. Only the vague remark that it's at Star's End, on the opposite end of the galaxy. So along with Magnifico, the trio pushes past the boundaries and into the remnants of the dying empire looking for answers, until eventually finding the remnants of Trantor itself, now reduced to an agrarian society in the wake of a revolt that wiped out most of the population. But the university remains intact, and Mies digs into it, learning more and more, but growing sicker and sicker as he goes on in there. Really should have stayed out of the university cafeteria. While this continues, Captain Pritchard, who had tried to assassinate the Mule, now arrives, and is in fact a colonel in the Mule's service now. It reveals the nature of the adversary. The Mule has mental powers that allow him to change the emotions of others, so that even his would-be assassin is now prepared to die for the Mule's cause. Nemesis had already figured that out, and also all about the second foundation. But before he can say where it is, Beta kills him, having realized the truth. Magnifico is actually the mule. And he would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for that meddling Selden. If the mule had the knowledge of the second foundation, he could destroy them before they could thwart his plans. Thus she eliminates his only real chance of doing that, allowing the fleeting hope that perhaps something could topple the mule and restore the Selden plan. To be continued. Asimov is most famous for his 3 laws of robotics, intended to prevent robots from rising up and displacing their human creators, since they would be stronger, faster, and smarter than us. Having established these foolproof rules, though, he then wrote numerous short stories of how the laws have unintended consequences, essentially subverting his own seemingly perfect safeguards. With Foundation and Empire, he does the same thing with his other creation of psychohistory. The science presumes that the individual does not actually matter in the grand scheme of things, so Asimov subverts this with a man who does just that. By making the mule a mutant, Asimov doesn't actually disprove the conceit of psychohistory, but rather shows that there are, like with the laws of robotics, assumptions at the heart of it that can be played with. As the characters themselves point out, there are 2 such assumptions: that a change of technology will not fundamentally alter the way the human race operates, or that an event will happen that will fundamentally change the way that people react to stimuli. He thus uses both the nuclear disruption technology and the mule's ability to change how people act by directing changes to their wills. The inclusion of the mule's ability is of no surprise. Asimov had a habit of including mental powers in his work. I, Robot and the Robots of Dawn both spring immediately to mind as examples of that. Asimov himself, though, was a firm skeptic and said in a 1976 interview that he felt the same way towards ESP. It was fun to imagine, but he did not believe proof of it existed. And yet, mental powers are central to the events in the final book, Second Foundation, which we'll be looking at tomorrow. Like Foundation and Empire, Second Foundation is divided into 2 stories. The first is about the efforts of the Mule to find and destroy the Second Foundation in the wake of Beta's disruption. They're the one serious obstacle he faces to galactic domination, because they're a secret force rather than an open threat like the first Foundation was that he could just overwhelm with ships or with the power of his mind. So the Mule is forced to stop his expansion and consolidate his forces for 5 years, trying to ferret out where his enemy is. And there's nothing more frustrating than a mule trying to ferret. Finally, he sends General Pritchard, his former would-be assassin, now the Mule's right-hand man, along with Bale Chanis, an up-and-comer with ambitions that the Mule says can be used to further his own ends, and that he is not converted. Chanis and Pritchard don't see eye to eye because Pritchard doesn't trust his motives and Chanis dislikes his attitude. But Chanis believes that he has found the location of the Second Foundation and even takes Pritchard there before he has a chance to agree. And after much consideration, it's decided that this is indeed the world of the Second Foundation. So Pritchard pulls a gun on him because, as Chanis notes, he must have done his job too well. But Pritchard insists only someone who is part of the Second Foundation would have succeeded so quickly. But Chanis bitch slaps the general with logic until he finally puts the gun down and admits defeat. But then, the Mule walks in and challenges Kevin Bacon to a dance contest. The Mule says Pritchard is right. Chanis is part of a Second Foundation, and that all of his attempts at logically worming around this are pointless. He used his mental powers on Chanis back in his office, and Chanis had gotten pissed off about it, sure, but what he had also done was briefly resisted mentally. Something that only someone else with mental powers could do. Someone from the Second Foundation. The Second Foundation is the polar opposite of the Foundation. It has no technological science, but it has incredible amounts of psychological science. So much so that it can train its members to develop mental powers. Of course, Chanis is a threat, so the Mule's ready to blast him, only he makes a miscalculation. Chanis removed the mule's control over Pritcher, restoring him to the man who was ready to suicide bomb the mule, and is presently armed with a blaster of his own. The mule could kill Chanis before Pritcher could kill him, so Chanis holds Pritcher back long enough for the mule to drop his own weapon to resolve this Mexican standoff. Pritcher's knocked out, the mule is unarmed, now it's just mind on mind. Except the mule has Chanis really outclassed and rips his mind a new one looking for the answers about the Second Foundation. But then the first speaker of the Second Foundation steps over Kevin Bacon and shows his moves. Turns out Chanis was one of their shittiest members, meant to draw in the mule so he could be dealt with, since he'd assumed that he'd have the advantage and so let his guard down. It turns out the Second Foundation didn't need a warning. They knew of the threat of the mule before the Foundation even really took notice of him, but they failed to consider that his mutation might leave him with physical shortcomings, like being sterile, hence the name The Mule. Combine that with a lifetime of mockery, which, as the first speaker says, we allowed only for megalomania, not for intensely psychopathic paranoia as well. The mule's loathing for the human race for his mistreatment is what makes him a threat. So the first speaker deals with this by striking at the mule when his guard is down and gets rid of the hatred. So the mule finishes out his brief reign without further bloodshed and then dies due to his emaciated and unhealthy body. This then sets up the second story, years later, as men of the First Foundation secretly wonder what effect the Second Foundation is still having. Beta's granddaughter, Arcadia, gets pulled into these events because there's a lot of nepotism in Foundation. She'd been born on Trantor but raised on Terminus. Well, she's 14 for all the raising that is. But she's too clever by half, so when her father and his fellow conspirators plan to check out the relics of the mule's reign in the hopes of learning where to find the Second Foundation, she tags along with the stuttering librarian, Munn, perhaps in the hopes that they can turn this into some kind of Saturday morning cartoon. War breaks out between the Foundation and Calgan, the former capital world of the Mule, and given the unintentionally amusing nickname of the gayest world in space. Throughout her adventures, Arcadia travels hither and yon, worried about the Second Foundation, until she gets a message to her father, a circle has no end. Code to indicate that the opposite end of the galaxy means if you go all around the circle of the galaxy, you'll wind up back where you started. So the Second Foundation has actually been on Terminus the whole time, hidden in plain sight. Her father then goes one better, creating a mental static device to stop mental powers and a device that emits a field that would cause intense pain in anyone who has such powers so that they could be found and dealt with. Except this was the plan of the Second Foundation all along, as they had to deal with the problem, the one that was behind all of this. See, the Foundation had their asses kicked by the Mule, and then the Second Foundation had to step in and sort him out. So not only does it hurt the First Foundation's self-assurance that they can stand up to an enemy alone, but they'll also believe that they don't need to worry because the Second Foundation will be there. They'll pull the same mistake that the mayor did with the Mule, trying to play the metagame instead of facing the problems that he should have been. His unwavering faith that the plan wouldn't let the Foundation lose prevented him from taking action which, who knows, might have prevented the Foundation from losing. Likewise, if they assume the Second Foundation is there to stop them from falling, then they'll probably fall again. They wouldn't be able to react like they should be, like self-determined people would. So they need to simultaneously give the Foundation a victory, in this case over the first citizen of Calgan, and they needed to make it look like they were gone and the Foundation was running things itself. Of course, the Second Foundation was still around. It really wasn't on Terminus. That was just a trick. The interesting bit with this is that for both sides, the Second Foundation and the Revolutionaries, they wanted the Second Foundation found and dealt with. It's just the former wanted it to be an apparent success rather than the actual success that the latter wanted. Now you might say, why would they want that? Isn't the Second Foundation safeguarding the very plan they've all been believing in? Well, yes and no. But part of it is illustrated by the EEG readings that they take several times throughout to show when mental tampering has taken place. But there's a subtle bit in there that the person has to face away from the device, that no one can see the EEG while it's going on, when it's hooked up to them, without subconsciously desiring to control the output. Likewise, there's a resentment of this kind of control, both direct in the mind and indirect through psychohistory. We want to be secure in our right to think our own thoughts and make our own choices and pursue our own destinies. And the Second Foundation threatens that. It's one thing to follow the plan of Harry Seldon. That plan was just that. A plan, not a doctrine, not a means of control, which is what the Second Foundation is. It's them silently ruling the galaxy. They acknowledge that a dictatorship, however benevolent, would still be resented, so this situation must be created artificially. They seem to have good intentions. We're not talking about giving them all grand throne rooms and such, but it is still a group simply deciding for itself that they should silently rule via the manipulation of the galaxy through psychohistory. In essence, conspiracy theories like the Illuminati or whatever secretly running the world. And yet this brings the Foundation trilogy back to the same end that Asimov's I, Robot did, with the revelation that the computer brains meant to aid the economy were now running the world and controlling our destiny, doing what was best for our own good, even if it's not what we would necessarily want as individuals or as a species. And Dr. Susan Calvin's response to how horrible is perhaps how wonderful. The same idea that the random forces that control our lives will be brought under the control of some benevolent force, some are still going to resent that, and others will manipulate those who resent to ultimately continue that plan.